Welcome, welcome, welcome. You are listening to the podcast, Not Your Average Shaman. I am your host, KL, and I am a shaman. So come on, let's get into it.
You and me forever walking. Make the sky see the sunshine. You and me forever walking. Yeah, alright.
Château Aubryon, 1959. Magnificent wine. I love French wine. Like I love the French language. I have sampled every language. French is my favorite. Fantastic language. Especially to curse with. Nom de Dieu, de putain de bordel, de merde, de saloperie, de connard, d'enculé de ta mère. You see, it's like wiping your ass with silk. I love it.
You know why we are here.
I am a trafficker of information. I know everything I can. The question is, do you know why you are here?
We are looking for the keymaker.
Oh, yes, it is true. The keymaker, of course. But this is not a reason, this is not a why. The keymaker himself, his very nature, is a means, it is not an end. And so, to look for him is to be looking for a means to do what?
You know the answer to that question.
But do you? You think you do, but you do not. You are here because you were sent here. You were told to come here, and then you obeyed. It is, of course, the way of all things. You see, there is only one constant, one universal. It is the only real truth. Causality. Action, reaction. Cause and effect.
Everything begins with choice.
No, wrong. Choice is an illusion created between those with power and those without. Look there, at that woman. My God, just look at her. Affecting everyone around her, so obvious, so bourgeois, so boring. But wait. Watch, you see, I have sent her a dessert. A very special dessert. I wrote it myself. It starts so simply. Each line of the program creating a new effect, just like poetry. First, a rush, heat, her heart flutters. You can see it now, yes? She does not understand why. Is it the wine? No. What is it and what is the reason? And soon it does not matter. Soon the why and the reason are gone. And all that matters is the feeling itself. And this is the nature of the universe. We struggle against it, we fight to deny it, but it is, of course, pretends it is a lie. Beneath our poised appearance, the truth is we are completely out of control. Causality. There is no escape from it. We are forever slaves to it. Our only hope, our only peace is to understand it, to understand the why. Why is what separates us from them. You from me. Why is the only real source of power. Without it, you are powerless. And this is how you come to me. Without why, without power. Another link in the chain. But fear not. Since I have seen how good you are at following orders, I will tell you what to do next. Run back and give the fortune teller this message. Her time is almost up. Now I have some real business to do, so I will say adieu and goodbye.
This isn't over.
Oh, yes, it is. The keymaker is mine, and I see no reason why I should give him up. No reason at all.
Where are you going?
Please, ma chérie, I've told you, we are all victims of causality. I drink too much wine. I must take a piece. Cause and effect. Au revoir.
So for those of you who are pretty big Matrix fans, you're welcome. Thanks for coming. Thanks for showing up. This is a topic that is very dear to me because it really exemplifies all of the major aspects of what we do in this community. And I'm really happy to present it in this format. It's actually the first time that I'm doing this type of presentation. So, you're along for the ride. Thanks. Let's talk about the why. The why is very important. And one of the great parts of this particular piece of the movie is how much he talks about the why. I'm going to demonstrate exactly how to do the magical part of this, as this topic is called the Matrix, the Magic, the why. But I want to start with the why. Why do we do what we do? Not just as a community, but you and me. Why do we do magic? Some would say, because we can. Some would say, because we have to. Others may even say, well, why not? But those are what we call rhetoric. And when I say we, for those who study in the path that I study, those answers are only rhetoric. Here's why. One of the foundations of human existence is to know what is our purpose here. And in order for you to truly know and understand your purpose, you have to know why. Why am I here? To do what? It's a huge question. And one that I'm going to show you today how to solve. I know that's a big undertaking, right? But that's why you're along with me for the ride. In this time, during the Wiccan calendar, this time of Samhain, it's very important to understand why. And that's the reason for me presenting this particular topic in this context. Coming down to the end of the period for harvest, you tend to be really grateful for what you have harvested. And that sort of attitude of gratitude is one of the big reasons why. That's one of the really big reasons why Samhain. So, I think it's really fitting to start with the why. So, the first point, why are we here? For each of us, we each individually have our own purpose, our own contribution to this existence. And finding that out is a big part of our life. For many of us, it has taken us a very long time to find out, and sometimes we don't find out at all, and we die without ever knowing until after the fact and realize that we maybe have just missed the mark. And so, reincarnation. Let's do it all over again. It's one of the reasons for reincarnation. What I'd like to share with you is how we came to be, and that would help to answer why. So, we exist. We all kind of know that, but I'm going to explain. Alright, so you might have noticed a little change in all of that. That's just because we're switching a little bit of barrier stuff, so we're back on. So let me continue. It was on the topic of our existence and how we were, we were birthed into existence just as a sentient. Now, continuing from there, being sentient is simply just a state of being. Now, I know the obvious question is, where are you getting this info from? I was trained very much old school, so if you want to know something, you go to the source and you ask. And so this is what I did, and created a series of channelings where this information is coming from. So let me continue. So, being birthed into existence as a sentient simply means a state of being and awareness. In that state of being and awareness, there's no body, as in no containment. You are simply an awareness and an expansive one at that. Now, what we live in this world is simply a construct. And in order to be a part of this construct, you must have a body. That's a caveat. Now, there are 3 stages, the first of which is being able to take possession of one of these material bodies. In order to do that, you have to have 2 other stages happen. One is you must sign a contract to obtain the soul. Now, the soul is the encapsulation which holds your sentience, or sentience, however you'd like to pronounce it. And this is the main part that allows you to sort of move around within this construct. In order to have one of these, you have to have a soul. Right? So those are the 3 things that must happen. I know you heard the word contract, so let me tell you about this, because I found this to be the most interesting part. The contract states 2 things. 1, you must find what inspires you to love. 2, find purpose. Now, you can do this in any order you like. However, usually one leads to the other, and vice versa. And when I got this piece of information, it blew my mind, because I thought to myself, if those are the only 2 things, then we're pretty much in a state of disrepair and pretty much out of sync, and there's a lot of fallacy going on. Because if those are the only 2 things, then why am I not happy? So I had to do a lot of, redress for myself to really let this sink in. And it is extremely profound, because if the only 2 things that you need to do are, look for what inspires you to love and find purpose, it's easy to do both of them. Because if something doesn't inspire you to love, then you move on. You move to the next thing. If something gives you purpose, it usually inspires you to love. Like, there's no way around not succeeding at either of them. So that began to really sink in. And then I asked a few more questions based on that. It turns out that's why we're here. To seek purpose and to find what inspires us to love. So then, why magic? Why do we perform rituals? Well, that part is easy. If you know why you're here, then magic becomes easy because you understand the creative process to create opportunities for finding purpose and finding what inspires you to love. I'll let you sit with that for a second. It's pretty cool, right? So, I'm going to explain the whole structure that embodies this ritualistic way. See, what I found is that there are very simple core factors, no matter what system, no matter what path you travel. Whether you're a left-hand path, or right-hand path, or middle path, or balance, Wiccan, Wudon, it doesn't matter. Why? Because they all follow the same exact universal creative math rule. Yeah, there's a math rule. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. Why am I sharing this with you? Well, you saw in the whole Matrix part, right? When they were looking for the key maker. The Frenchman said, yes, I know you're looking for the key maker, but the key maker by his very nature is a means, not an end. So you need the key maker to do what? So what's the end? And I'm also going to talk about that. That's part of the why. So let me give you a short example. You'd like to not feel so lonely anymore. You want to be in a relationship. Well, why? There are many ways to answer that question, but you have to be truly honest about it. Don't fool yourself and don't try to pander to yourself or let your mind go off into several tangents of, self-soothing. That doesn't help you. If you want to be in a relationship because you want to have a lot of great sex, then be honest with that. It's very important. If you want to be in a relationship because you want to find a deeper connection with another human being, be very honest about that. Those are the things that really help you to discover what inspires you to love. And in doing so, you will find purpose. See? That's how simple this is. So, means to an end. That's what magic is. Magic in and of itself is not an end, but a means to an end. And you have to know what the end is in order to understand your personal why. He talks about the only real truth, which is causality. One thing leads to the next. So, when you find out why, you will automatically know what to do about the why. You'll actually know intrinsically what direction you need to travel in order to get to that point. That's your end point. The only part of this that gets really confuffled is when we don't like the path. And that happens a lot. So don't feel bad if you don't really like, the messenger or the message, or, I don't like the body that mind came in. That's normal. We always tend to self-sabotage. It's the thing we do because we're internally and intrinsically looking for what inspires us to love without actually knowing that that's what we're looking for. So I'm explaining it to you so that you can actually understand what that process is. By looking for what inspires you to love, you're also going to find purpose. And so if it doesn't inspire you to love, then that's the difference. Now there's a caveat. If you don't like what the universe has brought to you, which is supposed to inspire you to love, then it means that some part of your vision and your sensitivities need to be adjusted so that you can not see things like this with blinders on, and that you can open up your sight to be a wider angle view. Because by being able to see a wider angle view, then you may even see why this thing that's in front of you is actually in front of you. Sometimes when you just look here, it's like looking at the facets of a diamond through a loop. If you don't know what a loop is, it's kind of like that little magnifying glass thing that you see jewelers and they kind of look at it right there. Yes. If you're just looking at one of the facets, one of the faces, one of the polished faces, you don't see the other facets. And so sometimes you actually need to put the loop down and just open up. So there may be somebody you may be interested in, but you may not see that that person definitely is not going to inspire you into love. Because maybe they're not there yet. And the person that would do that, you might have such a narrow view of who they are that you don't see the wider view of who they are. So these are just some of the things that I want to present to you to be able to give you that opportunity to understand how this process of causality works. If you have a narrow view, then based on the laws of causality, you're not going to see everything that encompasses. Right? So just take that with a grain of salt. Really, really let it sink in. He also talks about the biggest lie of choice. I love this part. Why? Because it is so very true. If you do not equip yourself with knowledge and the understanding of the knowledge you have acquired, then you limit yourself to whatever the eventuality of your actions are going to be. Which means you have no choice but simply to go with the flow. We're not here to go with the flow. We're here to create the flow. I'm going to say that again. We're not here to go with the flow. We are here to create the flow. And even when you are not actively participating, the choice to actively not participate is also creating. So why not choose to actively participate? And hence another reason for this is why magic. Magic allows you to actively participate in creating the flow. Therefore creating your own causality. Right? And then a big part of that causality gives you the power of choice, because you are now creating the flow that you want a particular end. So that's, you're flowing to that end purposefully, right? You found purpose. That's how easy it is to actually find purpose. The demonstration of out of control when he created that program in that very fine, delectable dessert. It's such an amazing demonstration. I've often had this conversation with some of my friends. Why is it the whole group didn't really want to be like the Frenchman? Here's the power of the Frenchman. Let me let you in on one of the biggest secrets of this particular section, this particular piece. The Frenchman was the most powerful person in that room. Why? Because he created the program that allowed him to make causality, to make the entire process of causality. He saw what he wanted. That woman inspired him to create a program that would send her out of control. He was by far the most powerful person in that room. Think about that. Not Neo, not Trinity, not even Morpheus. None of them were able to do that particular thing. That's why the Frenchman told him, well, you were just sent here, and since you're so good at following orders, let me give you an order to follow. Do you understand what I'm breaking this down in a way so that you understand why it is so important to act by using magic. This is the biggest reason why it is so important to act by using magic. Instead of us always being out of control because we follow orders or do not have the power of choice, why not we all become the Frenchman and write our own programs? All right? The knowledge to understand why is enveloped in you understanding who you are. And since this is a big part of our existence, you can also use magic to create the openness for you to understand yourself. When I go through the demonstration of how to understand the core principles of magic, we are going to end this off with ways in which we can use it. So, now that I've gone through the step-by-step breakdown of this amazing matrix scene, let's talk about the magic. Okay, so let's talk about this particular section. I'm really excited to share this with you. Let me introduce you to one of my most famous friends, Charles. So Charles and I are going to demonstrate exactly how this functions. The details are really important because, as you'll see, when we break this down, you'll be able to actually use this as a part of your basic construction set, as it were. All right? So, the beginning of this starts with creation. Now, as far as from a shamanic point of view and throughout many cultures, creation stories are very much the same. So I'll share with you the one that I've been taught. Starts out with what we call the primordial egg, right? And this primordial egg, from that, we get the emanation of the akasha. Right? Now, this is the really cool part. So the akasha is an element as well as a space. And in that space, that's where records are kept. All right? Now, the akasha is also known as many different names. The fifth element, spirit, that sort of a thing. We're not going to go into too much detail, just the bare minimum so that you can actually have a workable system. So, akasha. From the akasha, this is where everything else starts emanating from. So from here, you then have fire, and, let me do this the right way. So, fire and water come directly from the akasha. Right? Those two come out directly. Now, it is the interaction of these two that create air, and then the interaction of all three that create earth. Okay? Stay with me so far. So now you've got sort of a basic tree of how the creation process took place. Well, guess what? Our bodies are structured in the exact same way. The head represents fire. The chest represents air. The abdomen represents water. And from the waist down, all the way to the bottom of the soles of the feet, represent earth. And spirit is the thing that encompasses the whole system. So spirit is basically sort of above, right? Or akasha. For those of you who know me well, I'm not the greatest speller, but I use spell check all the time. So this is the basic structure of it. Now let's go a little bit deeper here. Not only do we have this principle of the elements, there are a number of other principles in play when we are constructing magic. So that would be the positive and the negative. You have to have both in order to create balance. When you're using one, the other is simultaneously in operation. each element has both positive and negative. So you have positive fire, positive air, negative air, and so on, as well as positive akasha or spirit, negative akasha or spirit. Okay? Now, within our body, if we look at this whole system, we're thinking about it as a macrocosm. So here's another one for you. Okay? So we'll put that below here. Macrocosm. Now, the next part of this is somewhat of a reflection, and I'm using that word loosely, and that would be microcosm. Looks about right. There we go. Microcosm is just that, the same thing, but more condensed. And check this out. You've got 5 fingers, and if I were to, well, let's set these down for a minute. You might be able to see this on this side. Let's try that. Yeah, I'll just trace my hand, make it easier. Dun, 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 dun. Do, 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 do. Doesn't this remind you of kindergarten? It's the best ever. There we go. And I'm just using my left hand for the purpose of this demonstration. So the thumb represents water. The index finger represents fire. Middle finger represents spirit or akasha. So of course, the ring finger is earth. That's why it is the ring finger. And last but not least, the pinky finger, air. Same thing, same structure. Now, if you have a lot of experience with working with magic and working with any form of magical system, no matter what the system is, if you've ever come across where you have to use your hands in particular formats, now you'll see the connection. And this is really important because if you can't actually throw down a ritual, then you can use your body as that format for the ritual. Here's another connection for you. Yoga. You're speaking magic with your body through yoga. And I'll show you how. Not only do you have the elements to play with, not only do you have the polarities to play with, your joints, right? They all represent the Akashic element, the thing that binds together, right? As well as the throat. And this is very, very important in understanding how all of this fits together. Now, moving into one more aspect of this. Now remember, we are talking about macrocosm and microcosm. So macrocosm is the whole thing. Just like this would be the macrocosm, we are the microcosm. And then we become the macrocosm for the microcosm. Okay? It's super simple, and then once you really get to understand it better, it makes more sense as you're performing this ritual. So in the next section, what I'm going to do is describe how this fits together for an actual ritual structure. So make sure you take good notes on this. I'll leave it up for a minute, and then we'll move to the next section. All right, let's talk the next section. All right, let's talk about how we put this into a ritual format. Now remember, still talking about macrocosm and microcosm. So we discussed how the creation story is the macrocosm, our bodies become the microcosm, and then when we break it down even further, our bodies can become the macrocosm for the smaller bits like our hands, which would then be the microcosm. I would like to, I got my trusty markers here, so let's get into a basic structure of a ritual. Sometimes shapes are used, and these shapes also denote the connection with the elements. So let's talk about those basic shapes. So, circle or elliptical, and that is the representation of spirit or akasha. Then we have a line, and a line would represent the positive and negative. So positive, negative. Then we have a triangle, which represents fire. Then we have square, which represents earth. We have, let me see if I can remember this correctly here. We've got star, which represents air, and then we have the circle again, which also represents water. Okay? And again, I'm sharing with you based on what I've used and what has been super effective. The difference between spirit and water, not much, because they're both containment fields. So when you put a circle, let's say on the ground, and that's your ritual circle, what you're actually doing is creating a containment field, and that containment field is identified as a creative space. It's been commonly perceived that you're creating a protection circle. It's not accurate. What you are actually doing is creating a creative containment field. Why? The creation story. So creation started out with what we call the primordial egg. And its function is exactly what it is. It's an egg. It birthed something. The thing that it birthed was the akasha. Now, if you're following the creation model of how you enact your magic, this makes it very simple, because all you have to do is do exactly what creation did, which is create a birthing space, a containment, a creative space, from which you can emanate everything. No matter what it is. Some people don't like to talk about the negative side or, the dark side. The universe actually doesn't care which one you use as long as you are creating, right? Be very aware of that. The next part of this is fire. Because fire was the first thing that came out, then fire also represents the the first aspect of the birthing place. So for every direction, you want to have what we call a manifestation space. And because fire was the very first thing to come out of the Akasha, it is considered a manifestation. All right, so let's continue. The other part of this here is that you want to have a space of manifestation. That's where the triangle comes in. So we'll use that here. And here. Here. And here. All right, with me so far? Okay. The triangles of manifestation is not a new idea. In fact, if you search really well, a lot of the more well-known magical systems actually use this as a place or space for entities, beings, effects to come in. So remember, this, as we identified, is a creative space. So you want to bring stuff into the creative space. Hence, you would be bringing in the elements because of the fact that from the Akasha, you had fire first, then water, then air, then earth. So those 5 are the elements that are needed in order to create, straight from the process of creation. So you want to do the same thing for your ritual circle and for bringing any sort of effect into your life. So let's say east, west, north, south, and then you, the operator, would be that spirit, because that's the battery, that's the power, right? You are the power up, you know. For those of you who like a little bit of Super Saiyan, you're the power up. Okay? So now that you have this form factor here, this structure, we want to take it one step further. That step further is to understand that this creative process involving you means that aspects of each one of the elements are going to come together for what you're trying to create. I think that's a really cool thing. It's not just a matter of just using one element. You may have one specific element that you draw from or upon for the majority, but the other elements are always going to come in play. Okay? So we'll just make note of that. This is actually something that I do teach whenever I am doing mentorships or, you know, just ad hoc training, things like that. And we go into way more detail. For this purpose, I'm just showing you the bare bones so that you can actually improve the way that you do things. So now that we have this structure, we would like to encase it. And the encasement, we'll use a different color here. The encasement would be earth. Just like that. All right, follow with me. This is now your basic ritual. Now, it's very important to add one more element. Remember how I spoke on earlier that you have to have the positive and the negative pole? this is where you add the negative pole. So the negative pole would come in the form of the off points. And the off points here would be northeast, oops, make that a good N, northeast, southeast, southwest, northwest. Okay? So what's the reason for that? Well, just like we spoke on, you have to have a balance of powers. So think about it this way. Let's say we were asking the universe for creativity. I want to be more creative. I want to have, better access to that energy that muses to help me be more creative, to be inspired to write something profound. That would be under the auspices of fire. But it also incorporates the intelligence of air. You need to be founded, grounded, and focused, which comes through the north or earth. And you have to have strong emotional content, which is going to come from water in the west. Do you see? Because emotions can be so strong, you need to balance it out. So, emotional creativity in the southwest. Intelligent creativity in the southeast. Grounded intelligence in the northeast. And emotional grounding within the northwest. Isn't that a beautiful system? Right? So how do you represent these things when it comes to actually performing a ritual? Well, I've actually devised a really cool way to do exactly that. So, the next part, that's what I'm going to show you. Alright, so here's what we're going to do. I've drawn this out so that I can explain to you exactly how beautiful this particular system is. So follow with me. You'll notice some of the shapes here you might have already known. Let me point your attention to how this was constructed. The first part is this triangle with the apex facing up. This triangle is meant to show reaching out into the universe to grab what it is you want. The lower triangle with the apex facing down is to receive what you've brought into your creative space. That's why the circle here, so your creative space, is between these two spaces. Normally, and you would necessarily see this in a regularly drawn ritual circle. But this is the full construct and the mental, sort of what we call dharma, the thing that you think about when you're doing this. You're reaching out to bring stuff in, and you have to receive it this way. You bring it down this way as you reach out. That's why the creative circle is in the middle. Not only there's that reception of the materials to build this thing that you're creating, but you're going to be using the elements to do that. So your east, south, west, your north, and as we discussed in the previous section, you will also understand that what you're bringing in and what you're creating requires balance and sometimes a mix of the elements. So northeast, southeast, southwest, northwest. Now, some people may say, well, don't you have to have this or don't you have that? Yes, sometimes. What I'm giving you is the structure behind all of that, so that when you perform your next ritual, or if it's going to be the first time that you actually perform a ritual, now you have a better knowledge base of exactly what's happening behind the scenes. So, for example, some people will have incense to represent air, some people will have fire to represent the south, some people will have water and dirt to represent the west and the north, respectively. Every cultural or non-cultural, non-traditional or traditional ritual system will always have something different to represent this sort of format. But this is the underlying bone structure behind all rituals. Every single ritual has this sort of dharmic structure behind it. You are reaching out to bring something in, you're going to receive it, and you're also going to construct parts of it using the elements and combinations of the elements. It's a beautiful system and a beautiful way to look at it, and very practical. That's what's even more important. Now, what's left after this? Well, it's simple. That's why I showed you the clip of the Matrix. You've got to know why you're bringing what it is you're bringing, because that really enhances the experience and gives you more purpose behind what you're doing. You want to know how to really supersize, or let's say make this exponential when you're working. Just know why. So, money in and of itself is a means to an end. So instead of focusing on, I want $5,000, what do you want the $5,000 for? Let's say, okay, I want to buy my own car. So actually, what you want is a car. This is where the way that you think changes. If you're reaching out into the universe for a car, you pull that in. You're receiving it into your creative space. It takes intelligence to search and do the right research to know the kind of car you like. That's important. Because if you're just going to reach out to the universe and say, oh, send me a car, the universe will send you a car. You may not like it. So, it takes intelligence to understand what your likes and dislikes are about transportation. The creativity comes in because there's movement. You want to move. Activity is also one of the attributes of the South. You want to feel good about it. You want to really feel good about when you sit in that vehicle. Here, it makes you feel more stable and secure. One of the purposes of a square is to show grounding and security. And that's just the bare bone minimum practicality of how the system works. And that's just with the idea of buying a car. Imagine how many other things that you may ask the universe for that involves just breaking it down to that sort of simplicity. Right? So, now that you have this, now I can actually explain a bit more about the Matrix clip. Alright? Let's do that.